Hello? It's on. Hey guys. Hello, my name is Nuno Sa. I'm a full-time underwater cameraman, and I spent most of my year traveling a bit around the world for landmark series, blue chip series usually, for BBC, Disney, Netflix, and so on. But my journey to become an underwater cameraman started 23 years ago here in Lisbon. I was studying to become a lawyer here in a fancy private university. And I took my first diving course here in Lisbon 22 years ago. And the first trip I ever did scuba diving with friends was to the Azores. The Azores is a group of islands in the middle of the Atlantic. It's an amazing place. I ended up falling in love with the Azores. When I finished my law degree, I was pretty sure I wouldn't be happy if I was a lawyer, and I had to somehow be involved in exploring the ocean. And I had traveled a bit around the world by then, but the Azores is part of Portugal, and it was actually one of the most beautiful places I had been, and where everything seemed very wild and unexplored. So I moved to the Azores, to the capital of the Azores, to Ponta Delgada, and I just got extremely lucky. It just felt a lot like the stars had aligned to give me an opportunity to be in the ocean. And I got a job as a whale watching crew member, and I started studying marine biology. And to be honest, at this stage of my life, the goal was to live in daily contact with the ocean. I did have a dream, and the dream was to become an underwater cameraman, because by then I was seeing a lot of Jacques Cousteau documentaries, and Blue Planet had just come out the previous year, and that was like such a big influence for everyone. It was seen by over 1 billion people, you know. If you have a series about the ocean that's seen by more than 1 billion people, it's just something that changes the way that we look at our ocean and so on. So, well, I started having these day-to-day adventures in the ocean, just turtles, whales, sharks. I mean, the Azores has over 1/3 of all the species of whales and dolphins that exist worldwide, including the most famous one, which is sperm whales. The Azores is one of the best places in the world to dive with sperm whales. So I just started taking pictures and sharing it with my family and my friends and so on, and then started getting into photography a lot, and I invested in my first underwater housing. And by then, when I started to getting into the underwater part of photography, I just really started to take it serious. And I started to have I was pretty much the only person in the Azores with a serious camera and living there, and that was trying to discover things that were unknown in the Azores at this time. So I had this kind of network of people that would tell me about stories that I could photograph. For instance, blue sharks. Nowadays, it's a multi-million euro industry in the Azores, but I was one of the first people to dive with blue sharks and discover how safe they were and so on for tourists together with the university. So I just started to explore the different stories that happen in different islands and just actively go trying to tell stories that people didn't know about. We have in the spring pretty much all the big baleen whales that exist on our planet, blue whale, fin whale, humpbacks, so on. And I just started to explore a lot of oceanic stories, and it winded up becoming specialized in oceanic stories, stories that just happen in the blue usually, a lot of stuff with whales and sharks and so on. By then, I bought my first boat so that I could explore stories on my own. It was a very, very small boat. It was about 4.5 meter long, over 30 years old, very old boat. And I did it I split it with a friend of mine. And the first day we went out on our boat was the first time I ever saw an orca. We got the news on the radio through a whale watching vigia, which is a guy that's on a mountain with the binoculars looking for stuff. And he told us about a group of orcas. I had never seen an orca in my life. Nowadays, I work a lot with orca. I've filmed orcas from Norway to Antarctica and Patagonia and a lot of places with different behaviors. But by then, I had absolutely no experience with orcas. And there's something very different with orcas when you hit the water. As soon as I hit the water, all the other whales I was used to working with, they would pass by, maybe check me out once, and then leave. And these orcas, these two, just came straight at me, and I was like, are they going to stop? You know? And I just thought I should have Googled, do orcas attack human beings? That's all I could think of. And nowadays, I do know that they do not at all. It's never happened worldwide, at least in the wild. It has happened in captivity. And by then, I read on the local newspaper that this guy called Wade Hughes, he's an Australian photographer, he had been awarded in the Wildlife Photographer of the Year competition. It's the biggest wildlife photography competition worldwide. And he had been awarded with this picture of a fin whale taken in the Azores. And I thought, it's a pretty nice picture, but by then I had so many pictures of the Azores. I thought, maybe I should try. I had never competed in any kind of photography competition. I didn't know what the Wildlife Photographer of the Year was, but I decided to send a couple of pictures. And this picture, which was the last picture I took of the orcas before I left, was awarded, and I had no idea that no Portuguese photographer had been awarded so far. So I started showing up in the news and so on, and I thought, well, maybe this is the opportunity I was waiting for to complete my dream. Maybe I could just quit everything else and just go for photography and video underwater, and that's what I did. Of course, I had no idea how to sell, where the money is supposed to come from, because I was in the middle of the Atlantic with very few people and had no access to editors or anything. And the answer of how to live out of it came on the same year. I started to hear these stories about pintados. Pintados, the tuna fishing boats would tell me about these pintados, and they would say it was a very large thing with white spots on their back, and whenever they would see it, they would catch an amazing amount of tuna in a short period of time. So it was mostly happening in Santa Maria Island, so I caught a plane, I went to Santa Maria, and the first day out, the first tuna boat we arrived to was this one over there, and the guy was yelling, "Pintado, pintado, pintado," and I just got into the water, and there was a whale shark in the water, and it came straight at me and just stopped in front of me. There was tunas flying in every direction, and just stopped in front of me, and I was like looking at it as well. No one had ever seen a whale shark in the Azores, and this was so amazing that there was thousands of tuna around it and everything. So in the next few years, I actually coupled with this guy. He's called George Fons. He's a researcher in the University of the Azores. He started putting satellite tags on these whale sharks. We could see up to 10 whale sharks in a single day, and no one had ever heard of whale sharks in the Azores, and it's the only place in Europe to see whale sharks, and there seemed to be a story happening here with the tunas that we weren't sure what it was, but could be unique worldwide. So this was the first time I ever had a paycheck with photography, and it came from the whale sharks of the Azores. And then I thought, okay, maybe it's possible to make some money and live the dream and so on. And of course, by then I thought maybe I should travel to Galapagos, Red Sea, just take these pictures that I'm seeing from other photographers and try to sell them as well. But I think about 2 months after the whale sharks, I was out. I actually lived in one of those white houses there in the background, and I was out on my little boat, and we were filming a group of baleen whales that were feeding on the surface. And in the middle of the whales, I saw a fin that looked like a basking shark, because I had been in Scotland before filming basking sharks, and it was a basking shark, and it was just underneath the boat. It's about 7 meters long. And I was able to take this picture, which was actually the picture I wanted to take of a basking shark when I was in Scotland, but I wasn't able to, and Scotland was like the best place in the world for basking sharks. And this was actually the first basking shark ever photographed in the Azores. So I was thinking, I mean, if I photographed the world's biggest fish and the second biggest species of sharks worldwide in a couple of months in the Azores, I mean, there must be so many stories that I can explore here. So I decided to dedicate myself only to photography and then video, because by then DSLR started to do good video as well. And I bought a very nice camera, a Red, and I just took a summer to do a nice reel about the sea life of the Azores. And just put it on YouTube, didn't think about it very much. And a few months later, I got a call from a person saying he was one of the producers from BBC, Blue Planet 2, and they were considering me to film a couple of stories in the Azores. And then I met up with them, and I ended up filming 3 stories in the Azores for Blue Planet 2. And I mean, Blue Planet 1 was pretty much the most significant thing to make me want to change my course of life. So it was so crazy that I could just be part of this. And then the Azores went really well, so they hired me to film in Norway as well with orcas hunting on herring. And suddenly I just achieved what I always thought the glamorous life of an underwater cameraman would be, which is going to the most remote places in the world and having the time of your life, because I can afford going to most of these places. And I started from going to 1,000 meters deep on submarines to going to Antarctica, to the Arctic and tropical waters and so on. And I never had a specific route that I was actually trying to get to this destination, which was becoming an underwater cameraman. But that was the goal. And a couple of months ago, I think in December last year, December to January, I was in Antarctica. And when I arrived to Antarctica, this was what I posted on Instagram, because I was just sitting there on the boat and actually thinking, I did it. This is my dream, just arriving to the most remote place in the planet and filming an amazing story. It was amazing. It was a story about orcas hunting seals and so on. And of course, as in any dream, sometimes you wake up to reality. On the next day, all that beautiful weather was gone and disappeared. And it was like this. The water was -2 degrees. Outside of the water was like -5 or 10. And the guy beside me, he was my safety diver, he was asking me, can you focus in these conditions? And I was like, I can't even see the freaking penguin, because as soon as you put your head out of the water, it would instantly freeze and you couldn't see anything beside ice. So, and a few months before that, actually there's someone in this audience that was on this ship with me. We were going to Antarctica, and we got hit by a storm with over 100 kilometers per hour wind, 15-meter waves, and our whole ship got pretty much destroyed, and we had to turn back and couldn't film anything on this shoot. And so, of course, as in any dream, sometimes it can turn into a nightmare. On the next day, our whole ship was covered with ice, and we had to break off the ice so we could return back home because it was too heavy and so on. But so I think about 7 or 8 years passed since I had seen the last whale shark in the Azores. And they disappeared for about 7 or 8 years, and suddenly they popped up again. And I got news through friends, scientists, and so on that they were back. And I had about a month and a half of my schedule free, and I thought, I'm going to tell this story because I always wanted to make a documentary about this story, because I thought this is something unique worldwide. So I headed back to the Azores, and I had the opportunity to spend a lot more time underwater and really figure out how this whole story happens. And basically you have these schools that are called snipefish, and they are an amazing biomass of fish that shows up in these huge bait balls in the Azores once in a while. They can disappear for like 10 years, and for some reason, they'll suddenly be back. And then we have the whale sharks of the Azores, which are all extremely large. They're all adults. Most aggregation places are juveniles, but they are very slow-moving as any other whale shark. So these whale sharks have a secret weapon, which are these thousands of tunas that are in front of them. And each whale shark has an escort of tuna. And the tunas are pretty fast, so they can actually prey on the snipefish, while the whale shark can't. So what we would see day after day was the whale shark would detect the bait ball. He wouldn't approach it. He'd just pass underneath it and let his escort of thousands of tunas just start working. And what they do, they dart to the surface and start surrounding it and corner it on the surface. And once it was cornered and couldn't have any place to run to, they would start feeding. And that's when the whale shark would come in and open its mouth and gulp in like dozens or hundreds of kilos of snipefish every time. And this is something that's been seen very few times worldwide, especially it's been seen a couple of times with bonito, but we had from bonito to yellowfin up to bluefin, 300-kilo bluefin tunas in the middle of all this. So this is some of my stock footage. That's why there's some serial numbers. It was sent to some productions. It will be on 2 very big landmark series soon. This is stock, so I could actually show it to you. Most of it I cannot show it to you. And This went on, this was captured 3 years ago, and it's been happening every single year since then. It's happened this summer as well. So I decided to make this documentary, and we were very lucky because we had this kind of secret weapon, which is we got a team of scientists to do the scientific part of the documentary, and we had this gadget which was developed in the north of Portugal by SEIA, which is a research department, and they basically made this little submarine full of gadgets that can see everything from water temperature to depth and speed and so on, and it has one little camera that's in the middle of the submarine. And the little camera was what was going to help us understand how this relationship between tunas and whale sharks actually happened. So it was built in the north of Portugal, then they just mailed it to us in the Algarve while all this thing was happening. We were almost halfway through the documentary when we actually received the camera. So we were able to see a lot of secret stuff about the life of a whale shark and the tunas. But the most interesting part that I want to share with you guys was we had a lot of really good encounters, and then we had 3 days of bad weather. And with those 3 days of bad weather, all the tunas disappeared. And suddenly, most of the whale sharks disappeared as well, and the few whale sharks that we could find were actually in a small marine reserve in Santa Maria Island called Ambrosio, a seamount, which is a place with a lot of pelagic fish and a lot of devil rays. And for some reason, we could only see whale sharks in this place. So I'm very fortunate I've had so many professional contacts through my life that I actually had a couple of friends that have a submarine that can go down to 1,000 meters, and I called them and asked, can you come here and help us finish this documentary because we want to find out why these whale sharks are in this specific place. So they brought their submarine, and this is what happened. Oh shit.
Oh wow, yeah.
wait. It's bigger than this. Okay.
Oh wow, here's the bubblers.
The bubblers here.
Wow.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Look at the size of that.
Wow.
Enquanto isso, à superfície, Nuno e o resto da equipa detectam vários tubarões-baleia a deambular em volta da baixa do Ambrósio. Um deles vem rodeado de centenas de peixes. Só que desta vez não se trata de atuns, mas de um grande cardume de lírios residentes desta reserva marinha. Felizmente ainda há uma câmara disponível a bordo e não hesitam em colocá-la neste tubarão que parece ter acabado de contratar uma nova secção de estagiários. Com os olhos focados no fundo, os tripulantes do Lula 1000 estão prestes a receber uma visita inesperada. O pequeno submarino amarelo despertou a curiosidade de um tubarão-baleia. E não é um tubarão qualquer, é um tubarão cameraman, ou camera shark. Vem equipado com uma das câmaras de George, mas no silêncio das profundezas, a sua presença quase passa despercebida.
Oh, whale shark just above us! A whale shark just above us!
Wow! Yeah! Look at got it! Whoa! Whoa! Who'd say that?
Another whale shark just above us. Whale shark just above us.
Whoa!
Is Nuno in the water?
Look, amazing! Woo! Look at that! This is right above us. He's coming here on our 2 o'clock above with all the jacks around. Whoa! He's climbing again. He's trying to take the jacks away. The jacks are following the whale shark. I think they come in to take the jacks because there's no tuna. They're taking the jacks.
That was perfect because we had the jacks and he came and he took them. This is amazing because this is at least the 3rd time or 4th time that we've seen the exact same pattern. I'm more and more convinced that really this is the case. They're trying to take the jacks away from Ambrosio.
There is Nuno.
He's lucky after all. He's the luckiest cameraman I've seen.
Yes, definitely.
So what happened was these whale sharks, when they lost the tunas, they were too slow to actually hunt their prey. So they all merged to the only place where there was big schools of pelagic fish. And actually one of these whale sharks was able to recruit the big school of jacks that you saw there. And the whole summer, the fishermen were seeing one whale shark with jacks doing the tuna job, surrounding bait balls and feeding on the bait balls, and the whale shark feeding with the jacks. So I'm out of time. I'm beyond time, sorry. I just want to say, if anyone wants to chat further on later, I am a SECO friend and a Mars ambassador, so I'll be hanging around that corner over there. Thank you to the organization. This is being an amazing event, and thanks for inviting me. Thank you.